I don't know how this is going to work, whether employees will be requesting time off from here or they'll be requesting from the core HCM solution that you might be utilizing. So you might have multiple systems that might be managing the state. So again, you need to decide which system is going to be source of authority for leave data and how is that interaction going to work.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you are joining for the first time, this is part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And for today, we have a very interesting solution that we are going to review. It's Infor WFM, and this is part of our HCM series that we have been reviewing recently. We have covered a lot of different solutions, so we are going to dig into that. Before we do that, we are going to start with everybody's intros. I am going to start with my quick intro. Sam Gupta, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP, CRM, HCM, and digital transformation consulting firm. On that note, Srashta, would you like to introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Hi, my name is Shrestha Das, and I am part of the marketing team at Elevate IQ. And I'm super excited to be here and learn more about Infor WFM.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Srashta. As always, it's always fun to share the stage with you. And if you are in the audience and joining for the first time, make sure you guys post your questions and comments. We typically utilize them for our reviews. If you have any specific stories that are resonating with you, please share with us. We definitely appreciate those. On that note, Srashta, I'm going to start with the quick briefing of the solution. So as you know, the number of layers that we typically cover, that is going to be the size, industry, competitors. So those are some of the common variables that we generally utilize in all of our reviews. So if you compare the landscape of different HCM solutions that we have reviewed so far, so Infor WFM is going to be slightly more in the enterprise category, even though the Infor's target market is mid-market for the most part. But from the HCM perspective, if you look at the way other HCM companies design their buckets, so this is going to fall into more of the enterprise category. Just to recap on the buckets that we had discussed just the last time. So this was your under 50 employees, 50 to up to 1,000 employees, as well as your 1,000 plus. So in general, the buckets that you have in the HCM market are very, very different from ERP market, because for ERP market, the operational transaction volume is going to be a much bigger critical success factor. For HCM, it's going to be number of employees, and in certain industries, you might have, let's say, 1,000 employees, but their total revenue may be, I don't know, maybe 50 million or 100 million. Somewhere, we see those scenarios as well, just because these employees may not be paid as much. So the buckets may be all over the place, but here the variable for the HCM is going to be number of employees. So this particular solution is targeted for the enterprise category in the HCM market. And again, that is going to be your 1,000 plus employees. Now, overall, discussing the competition. So from the competition perspective, if you really look at the solution was designed for the healthcare organizations. That is the background that we have about this one. So they were targeted for the Canadian healthcare organization. And I don't know if you are able to relate or not, Srashta. One of the things that we had noticed for Ceridian was very Canadian solution as well. And they target a lot of healthcare, companies as well. So these two have very similar positioning, very similar offering. From the solution footprint perspective, this is the WFM solution, right? And WFM solution is not going to be part of every single HCM out there. it is going to be applicable in a very specific industry if they utilize the workforce scheduling as part of your HCM component. And generally, those industries, number one, healthcare, big one. Okay, then your retail, media franchises, we have seen that they do similar things. Banks, insurance, again, these are very, very, very different verticals. For them, the ERP is not going to be as big a critical success factor in general. So that is the competition. Now, competition has many different layers. So number one, obviously they are going to be competing with Ceridian, at least in the WFM market. I don't know if these guys are going to compete in the overall HCM market. Right now, Ceridian they started as more of the WFM solution, but now, they have complete HCM suite. So with this, I think you would require a lot more components in general if you're looking for full blown HCM suite. That's not the intent of Infor WFM. Now, when you compare certain industries, for example, let's say if you compare this with healthcare, in healthcare, Infor has much bigger offering from the ACM perspective. So if you look at Infor S3, Infor Lawson, those are two products that are targeted for the healthcare market, and they are going to provide a lot more capabilities from the ACM perspective. So in healthcare, the overall offering may look complete, but that is not to say that Infor has complete HCM solution for every single industry out there. So industry, the size of the company matters a lot. So again, the core offering from the WFM perspective is really that WFM offering. Infor has a lot of different solutions in their portfolio, but as such, it is not as complete as some of the other competing solutions that we have reviewed, especially if you look at the competition. For example, let's say if you look at Oracle HCM, SAP SuccessFactors, Workday, they are going to be far more complete HCM suite compared to what Infor WFM has. Now, if you compare this to Ceridian, Ceridian is going to be far more complete as well. We reviewed ADP Vantage, and ADP Vantage, even though they were very complete from the payroll finance perspective, but they are not going to be complete in the other areas. So if you compare these two, I guess Infor is going to be stronger in certain areas. So it's a partial solution, but they are going to be, far more capable in certain areas. If you combine with the other solutions that they have in their portfolio for specific industries, for those industries, they might be complete, but that is not to say that it's a complete solution, across the industries. They have some of the interesting industries that I don't think we have reviewed with any other solution so far. For example, they do really well in the law enforcement space. The corrections is another industry where they are doing really well. Fire departments, municipalities. So this is majorly part of Infor's public sector offering, and Infor has a lot of different solutions in their portfolio for public sector. Infor is known for manufacturing, but there are other solutions that they sell in the public sector space as well. So for the most part, WFM is successful in those areas, even though it is going to be integrated with some of the other solutions, such as your Infor LN, Infor M3. They integrate with that. But again, the major positioning is going to be in the healthcare space, public sector space. That's where they are going to have their majority of the logos. Any comments, or I'll keep going here?
I think we can keep going.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So here some more comments. One of the things that we have noticed is demand-driven scheduling and workforce scheduling. Now, when you look at the real demand-driven scheduling, this becomes tricky, especially if you look at the way healthcare organizations operate. They are going to have very different scheduling requirement, and that is going to change every minute depending upon how your facility is operating. Now, a lot of people are going to argue, especially the people who are going to be in manufacturing and retail world, that scheduling challenges are going to be fairly similar in those organizations as well. And that is true partially, but the number of data elements that you are going to be needing and the kind of scheduling workflows that you are going to have, healthcare is unique beast in general. So in this particular case, I mean, this is the first time that somebody has used the reference called demand driven scheduling. So this is fairly new. I don't think anybody has used that. Obviously they are going to have very unique layers. In general, Infor is very good in writing scheduling algorithm based on their ERP background. So obviously this is going to be really good as well. So again, if you compare the scheduling of your Info WFM with the other competing solutions, I'm pretty sure Ceridian is probably going to be comparable, but I'm not too sure about the other solutions that you are going to find in the market, if they are going to be equally comparable from the scheduling perspective. Scheduling in general is one of the weakest areas. Even if you are going to find one of the strongest HCM suite, they might not be as strong from the scheduling perspective, because from their perspective, they are going to argue that, you know what, we don't do scheduling. Our role is not necessarily scheduling. We do training, benefits, whatever are going to be the responsibility of HR, they generally specialize in that. If you talk to Bamboo, they are probably going to argue about that because they don't necessarily have the WFM component as part of their solution. And also the organizational maturity, that matters a lot. So from the Bamboo's perspective, the kind of organizations that they are working with, with them, the scheduling might not be as challenging, and they might be able to operate or manage that on spreadsheets. But when you get to enterprise level, when you are going to have 1,000 employees and you need to manage schedule of different facilities, etc., then your scheduling is going to be a much bigger factor in general. They have spoken about some of the compliance rules when it comes to the complex pay and scheduling rule, and they have mentioned some of the compliance standards that they are able to comply with. But in general, this is going to be slightly more technical solution, meaning you are not going to get the many services that you are going to get with some of the other solutions that you have in the market. For example, UKG had many services bundled as part of their offering. ADP had managed services bundled as well. So with that, you are going to have far more confidence in general from the compliance perspective. In this case, yes, they might be able to technically incorporate a lot of these requirements, but you are pretty much on your own in learning how to configure that and how to enable those and make sure that you are going to be compliant with those requirements. And for that, you would require substantial consulting help that you might not require with the other solutions if they are doing this as part of the managed services. Now, some concepts such as your shift bidding. It's a very unique concept. I don't know how many industries really use that. I don't think we have seen with any other solutions so far. But the whole idea here is that, okay, you are going to publish the schedule and then people can bid if they would like to get that particular schedule. So basically, this is all about flexible scheduling and time management. So if you are trying to enable that more from the employee experience perspective, then you can do that. Now, my take on this is going to be that healthcare probably would have that, because nurses in general, they are working around the clock. And if you are not going to have this, then they are probably going to struggle, managing their family time, etc. So maybe it's far more relevant there. So that could be the reason why we have not seen this particular concept with any other solutions so far. But seems like Infor WFM has that. I think I'm pretty good. Unless you have any comment, I'll move to the next one. Yeah, and they are talking about device agnostic time off. For the most part, the technology is going to be slightly legacy from Infor's perspective. They are enabling that mobile experience using that Infor OS layer, so which is not going to be as seamlessly integrated with the other underlying solutions that they are going to have, and the mobile native experience is not going to be built as part of the solution itself. For example, let's say if you look at Ceridian is a very cloud native solution. If you look at Bamboo is a very cloud native solution. Workday is potentially cloud native as well. They will be able to provide very similar mobility experience that your Bamboo is going to provide. But within Infor, the experience is going to be slightly legacy, meaning they may have designed some of these apps, but those apps are sort of siloed. They are not built and baked as part of the main solution. So you are not going to find the same seamlessness that you will find with the other solutions that are going to be cloud native from the technology footprint perspective. Now, whether that matters or not, I mean, that you have to ask yourself, what do you care for most? If you care for slightly more device agnostic experience, as well as you are very modern tech startup where you care for Salesforce like experience or Gusto like experience, in those cases, you might want that. So again, this is all based on what is the critical success factor for you and whether you care for these features or not. but with Infor, the experience is going to be slightly more legacy. So that is something you need to keep in mind.
So,
The
Sam, do you think this factor will affect their audience, like which is majorly healthcare? Because with coming time, I think it will be more technology oriented.
Yeah, so
So,
I guess go ahead. Keep going.
yeah, yeah, that's
Uh,
all.
okay, so basically, where you are heading with that question is if you care for, let's say, in some cases, you would care for patient experience. For the most part, this is not going to be exposed to your patients, right?
Hmm.
Your healthcare workers are going to use this particular solution. It's going to be your doctors, nurses. They are the ones who are doing their time entry, etc. Now, if you look at the majority of the healthcare organizations, they have fairly legacy solutions in general. I mean, they are not going to use something like Workday. There might be some organizations that might use very cloud native experience, but for the most part, if you look at the major footprint, that is going to be your EHRs. Those EHRs are very legacy and clunky the way they operate. I mean, they are fairly mainframe right now. I mean, you will see those green screens. So healthcare workers are fairly used to in using those, and they
Okay.
also use a lot of machines, and those machines are going to have very mainframe like interfaces. I mean, it might take, I don't know, maybe 50 more years before they get those cloud native interfaces. So from the healthcare workers perspective, I don't know if they are going to care for this experience, but that is something to keep in mind. Let's say if your workers are fairly modern, they every single system that they are using is very cloud native, then they might find it slightly overwhelming that, okay, why are we using this? Yeah, so depending upon how your organization is, what is the demographic of your organization, what is their taste and preferences, based on that you need to discuss. Okay, so I'll move to the next one if you don't have any other comments there. Now, this is where I guess you are going to see a lot more capabilities that I don't think we have seen anywhere else. Even for the scheduling, I think that the kind of KPIs that you are going to see. So, for example, things such as your nurse to patient ratio. Now, you might find these KPIs inside some of the ERP systems as well. But again, this KPI is very different because here you are trying to manage your operational scheduling. This would not go as part of your financial solution. There might be some ERP systems that might be designed for healthcare, but then I think the way healthcare organizations operate, they are not going to like that financial input, financial embeddedness as part of their operations, because they are trying to save lives. And if there are going to be any sort of delays or accounting errors as part of their operational workflow, generally they don't appreciate that. And that's why you have slightly more disconnected operations with healthcare in general. So here, the nurses to patient ratio that you're looking at, this is going to be more from the utilization perspective in terms of how occupied those nurses are, and do you need to reduce the workload, because you are going to have a lot more compliance requirements here as well. Okay, as a hospital, I mean, you are supposed to comply with several requirements. How many nurses you are going to have, what is the ratio that you are need to maintain, as part of compliance. And if you don't maintain that, then obviously you are going to have financial penalties. So the monitoring of this is going to be extremely critical from the workload perspective, from the enterprise health and safety perspective. EHS. They have many different KPIs that are fairly unique. So that's why the whole WFM component for your healthcare is very unique. You have things such as your support employees. Now, I don't think we have seen support employees as part of scheduling anywhere else. There might be cases where this might be applicable, but for the most part, you have the main employee for which you are scheduling, and then you are also going to have dependent employees, and they sort of move together. Now, these kind of scheduling trends that we see with some of the ERP systems where they have the dependent jobs, but there you are scheduling jobs. Here you are scheduling your employees. Now, how do they marry each other? That's a question, right? For healthcare, you are probably not going to have that problem, because you might not necessarily schedule this as a job, and you are not doing the whole production scheduling the way you are going to do inside your ERP. Here, the scheduling is going to be very different. You are scheduling per patient, per procedure. So again, it's a very different functionality in general. You are going to have other things such as your scheduling of beds and rooms. Now, that is also very unique capability that you are going to require with hospitals. Similar features I think we have seen with some of these solutions such as your EAM. EAM is going to have very room building specific scheduling, and that scheduling is not going to correlate with your financial scheduling the way your production scheduling is going to be in manufacturing. So this would be similar to your enterprise asset management scheduling now. And I don't know how many hospitals and the healthcare organizations are going to use asset management solution. There is a possibility because they have a lot of equipment and they are trying to manage those assets as well. So you need to decide, okay, which scheduling are you talking about? So in this particular case, this is more of the patient care scheduling. And if you have the asset maintenance that you might be doing, and you are going to have a different scheduling component for that as well, and that is probably going to reside inside your EAM solution. So there are always layers to these things. If you talk about scheduling, okay, which particular scheduling are you talking about, and who's scheduling, who is the target audience for this? So that's what you need to review when you are reviewing this. But this is going to be super relevant for healthcare organizations, but for other organizations, I'm not too sure. They have some more things such as they have mentioned some of the commentary that they are doing balancing cost. But again, I don't think you are going to have the real financial state unless you integrate with other Infor offerings. So you would require some other solutions. And that's where your Infor S3 as well as Lawson, those are going to be the products that are going to be handy. If you have that complete integrated state, then there is a possibility that you might get the picture of the cost in the solution. But again, it's a very operational state. So for the most part, the cost is something that you might not get in the solution or WFM like solution. And for the most part, you are intentionally choosing your decoupled architecture. And the reason for that is because for you, the finance and costing is not as relevant. You care for your patient care more. And after that, you can figure out whatever the cost and finances is going to be. That's after the fact. So that is very intentional design and architecture that you are choosing for your organizations. In some cases, that's going to be far more relevant. Again, healthcare organizations operate that way. Retail organizations operate this way. Okay, but that might not work with other cost sensitive organizations such as your manufacturing that has to manage manufacturing, procurement, etc. as part of the whole MRP engine. So again, very different perspective, very different industry. Now this is the first time that we are really exploring the EMR or EHR overlap. Srasta, so EMR are almost like the front-facing system for hospitals and the healthcare organizations. So this is where when you go and see a doctor, and doctor is going to capture their notes. So it's almost like their CRM, to be completely honest. Okay, but it is going to have a lot more than just the CRM in that system. So you are going to have all of that information related to your procedures, coding, the visits. If you have any sort of compliance that you need to comply as part of your physician workflow, then you are going to have all of those capabilities as well. So EMR data is going to overlap with your WFM solution as well, because technically whatever data elements that you have inside your EMR solution, they are going to be relevant for your WFM because you have your nurses, doctors, patients, to some extent procedures as well. You might be capturing at least some state of that inside your WFM solution. So they both need to talk to each other, and then you have to figure out, okay, who's doing what overall in terms of the scope of the responsibility. So there's going to be a touch point with your EMR in healthcare as well. Okay, we don't have any other comments. Unless you have any other comment, I can keep going here. Yeah, so I think we spoke about this whole time and attendance piece. And for the most part, if you look at the core capability of Infor WFM solution, they are really known as the time and attendance solution. And that's how even Ceridian started. They started as the time and management solution for very harsh environments, meaning you are going to have those panels outside of your facility when you are going to have minus 30 temperature. Can the terminal still survive? That's number one. Number two, you are going to have fingerprinting enabled as part of your devices. And if you are in a very dirty environment, sometimes that clocking in, clocking out is not going to work. So for those use cases, Ceridian was the great fit. Infor WFM has very similar positioning as well. I don't know how capable they are going to be from the hardware perspective, but that is something that you should explore. If you are exploring this particular solution. So here, overall, from the time and attendance perspective, they are going to have far more sophisticated capabilities from the algorithm standpoint, meaning you will have a lot more layers in how you can manage the time and attendance function. So here they are talking about automatically track attendance policy compliance. Now there are a lot of layers to it, right? So for example, let's say if you are a healthcare organization and you have a lot of inputs coming from your employees, you are part of that the whole suite from the Infor perspective, then this might work. But let's say if you are simply using Infor WFM solution in conjunction with some of the other solutions, then you might have challenges because it's going to require a lot of inputs that might not be available with your Infor WFM solution. So again, it looks good on paper that automatically track attendance policy compliance, but for policy compliance, number one, you need to be administering your policy inside the system. Okay, so that's going to be your data entry. So what is your source of authority for the policy and compliance? And after that, obviously, you need input from your employees as well, that they are going to be inputting data for the system to be able to understand whether they can manage, the policy compliance or not. So again, there are always going to be a lot of layers to these things in terms of what is going to work and what is not going to work. The second one is real-time pay categorization. Use employee time collection data to determine what time code, pay code, and pay rules apply. In my opinion, I think that's slightly easier functionality. With these smaller solutions such as your Bamboo, you're not going to find as many layers. Okay, you might not have as many pay codes. That's where they are going to be limited. They might have superior mobility experience, but they are definitely not going to have as many time codes, pay codes, etc. The number of business rules that you can configure, accommodate, that's where Infor is going to be really strong. But in general, this functionality is easier to accommodate that you are going to find probably in most enterprise systems. Balances and accruals, again, this is a very tricky piece of functionality. So for example, let's say if your employees are using the mobile app provided by Infor, and they have their own sort of accruals and the time of request managed from that mobile app, then it's going to work. If you don't have that, then you might have issues with that. Because you would require input from the users, and if you don't have that, you will not be able to compute it. Again, leave management is very tricky depending upon whether you are using this as the complete ACM solution. You would require multiple ACM solution with this, in my mind. So I don't know how this is going to work, whether the employees will be requesting time off from here, or they'll be requesting from the core ACM solution that you might be utilizing. So you might have multiple systems, that might be managing the state. So again, you need to decide which system is going to be source of authority for leave data and how is that interaction going to work. Employee contact tracing is very important. I think this is the new functionality that everybody sort of introduced, during COVID, because they wanted through the whole linking to be able to trace. Now, I don't know how important that is now since COVID is gone. So again, great piece of functionality, but again, I don't know if there is a real practical use case for that, post COVID. They have used the term called multi-view scheduler. And to be completely honest, I mean, when you look at the multi-view scheduler these days, pretty much every single app out there probably is going to have some sort of multi-view scheduler. For example, let's say if you look at things such as your Monday.com or Trello, they are going to have very simple project management view, and they are able to provide multiple views for the similar information that you might have. So I don't know if multi-view scheduler is really that critical, to be completely honest, even though they have positioned this as it's a very advanced and complicated functionality, but it doesn't seem like that it's probably as detailed or it would be as critical. Central staffing is very important, but again, depending upon how many different systems you are using. If you are using this as your main ACM solution, then there is a possibility that it might work, but central staffing in general is very complicated function. So you are going to have a lot of different teams. You are going to have contractors. So not sometimes, I mean, ACM system does not contain that state. In fact, I mean, even SAP is going to have two different systems for your contingent staffing and the main staffing. So, I don't know how you manage that. So again, it's easy to say that, central staffing, but I don't know whether that is going to work or not. Fair scheduling is the compliance law that they have in a lot of different states, and you need to comply with that. And there are several rules that you need to incorporate, and that will go in your payroll function. So for the most part, Infor WFM is going to use one of the leading payroll providers such as your ADP, and so they are going to do payroll. These guys are going to be doing the computation, so they are going to have business rules as well as the data layers that can enable you to accommodate all of these rules. But again, you need to configure your own processes. You need to understand that. So again, I don't think you are going to get the real managed services. If you want the managed services, there might be partners in the Infor ecosystem who might provide that. But again, you are kind of on your own in setting these things up. They are talking about shift billboard, and shift billboard is very interesting as well. For the most part, everybody's going to have their own perspective in terms of their shift and schedule. So from the healthcare perspective, this is great. But again, I think most of the solutions are probably going to have that. That's pretty much it on this one. Unless we have any other comments, I'll keep moving. Okay, so here they have spoken about labor costing, and they have used a term called activity costing. And activity costing is very interesting. You are going to see this term in solutions such as your SAP and Syspro. Okay, they use this. I have personally never seen any organizations using activity costing for any practical purposes. Okay, there are some CFOs who are going to be excited about activity based costing, but again, I don't know a business case where it made sense unless they are simply using this because they like the feature. So I'm not aware of that. Here they are claiming that they can do that. I would doubt if they are even able to do just costing, because again, you don't have that financial data unless that financial data is coming from other underlying Infor systems. So if you're using that, then this could work. But if you're simply using Infor WFM alone, then there is a possibility that it might not work at all. Labor budgeting is a very interesting concept as well. Now, every solution out there is going to claim that they can do budgeting. And so here, let's say if you have very siloed perspective where the only thing you are looking at is the budgeting for your labor, then this might work. But for the most part, I think you are going to require other data sets, and you need to have slightly more centralized budgeting. And for that, you have solutions such as your FP&A, and those are designed for that. So, so in my mind, it's a great feature if somebody uses it. But for the most part, your scheduling must reside inside your FP&A. And in some organizations, the reason why they might be using this from this solution is because they might not have FP&A, or the department might be very siloed overall. They might not be talking to finance, or they might prefer something that is slightly more siloed as opposed to integrating with all of the other departments. So that's where I guess there may be a use case where it might make sense. But for the most part, if you are looking for the combined view, the enterprise view from the planning and budgeting perspective, that should go inside your FP&A solution. So this does not seem to be the right place, but seems like they have the capabilities for that. Okay, I'll keep going here. So now this is where they are trying to show a lot of different architecture, right? So this is coming from one of the YouTube videos, that covered the WFM component. I think it was from one of the Infor partners. So here they are talking about, okay, what resides inside your WFM, what is going to be your ACM, and even they are calling out ACM completely separate from your WFM component. And then you have some of the downstream system processes as well. From their perspective, they are saying downstream is going to be your number one payroll reporting, and reporting is going to be that ERP component that healthcare companies might be utilizing. Submission to general ledger, so they are branding ERP as more of the general ledger. But in healthcare organization, the responsibility of ERP is probably going to be limited to general ledger because they don't utilize ERP for anything else. Then they are doing the labor accounting. Even they are saying that the labor accounting is happening in the downstream system because they are not going to have that state in this. So here, overall, from the architecture perspective, they have the timekeeping, attendance management, time capture devices, advanced scheduling, accruals, entitlements, and reporting and analytics. And in my mind, that is the accurate scope of WFM. WFM is designed for the whole scheduling, timekeeping, time and attendance. That's the intent of WFM solution. And one of the unique variable that you are going to see here is going to be your HCM. So you have HCM here, you have payroll here. So the upstream component is going to be your HCM. HCM is sending you a lot of data because without that data, WFM is not going to work. And that's where you are going to have your employee number, employee profile data, and some of these things you will assume that they would probably reside inside your Infor solution if Infor is selling this as more of the HCM. But for the most part, this is really your WFM solution. So all of these employee related information, the confidential information that we have been discussing so far, employee number, profile data, training, benefits, all of that is probably going to reside inside HCM. And they are calling this as GHR. So that's going to be your global HR. So from their perspective, the global HR is going to be one system that is tying all of their facilities, and then WFM is probably going to be deployed at the facility level, and that is probably the right architecture if you use the scheduling component at the facility level versus the the corporate solution that you are going to have at the corporate level. So again, depending upon the architecture, how you are using these solutions. One of the other unique component is going to be your FSM solution, and the reason why you have FSM here is, and FSM is your field service management. That's going to be your, Infor has FSM. Okay, we have reviewed a lot of field service management solutions as well. And Sresta, I don't know if you were part of those. So those are your Service Titan, Service Power. IFS has a great presence in the field service, category. So the reason why you have the field service management as the input is because you need to get inputs from your drivers, from your field service workers. So that's why FSM is going to be an input. And in this particular case, FSM seems to be more of the upstream component, which is kind of strange. And then it has the downstream component as well. So it is actually talking both ways. So it's very interesting the way this architecture is. And again, if you have a very complicated organization utilizing just Infor WFM for this and figuring out all of these moving pieces, it could be extremely challenging from the design and architecture perspective. So keep that in mind. But here, your interaction is going to be with your ACM, with your FSM, with your CRM, with your EHR, a lot of moving pieces. Yeah. So I don't have anything else on this one. I'll keep moving. This is another slide coming from their product pages, and they have many different offerings that they have branded. So they have the GHR, so that's going to be your global HR component. They have fairly basic capabilities for their GHR. Again, in certain industries, those capabilities might be far deeper, but not everywhere. They also have HR service delivery, so that's going to be your the whole ServiceNow centric workflows, that the kind of work that ServiceNow is doing these days, and that is going to be more from the employee experience perspective. Employee might be doing a lot of things on their mobile app. They are sending a lot of different things from the approval perspective. Then this whole collaborator piece is trying to manage all of those requests. So that's where your HR service delivery is going to be, and this particular component is going to have all of those cases, the SLAs that you have with the employee. So again, this is the problem that the larger organizations are going to have. So when you're going to have those 1,000 employees, that's where you're going to get into all of these scenarios. But again, I mean, you have bits and pieces, but this is not necessarily the complete ACM solution. For hospitality, we are going to have a lot more things in general. So if you look at the kind of industries the solution is targeting, that's going to be your healthcare, law enforcement, hospitality to some degree, public sector. In those cases, this would make a lot more sense, just because they're going to have a lot more capabilities from the planning utilization perspective that you might not find with the other solutions. For hospitality, they have one more solution, which is your price optimizer. Again, that's a very unique solution. I don't know how many different companies have that capability. HR benefits, again, I think benefits are going to be really light in general, but seems like they have something. HR case management, HR payroll. I don't think you'll be utilizing payroll from Infor. For the most part, you'll go for something like ADP. But even the service delivery and the case management, etc., is going to be fairly light in capabilities. I'll keep moving here. So this is where they are really, really detailed, and that is going to be your timesheet entry. And that was the original intent of the system. For purpose it was designed. So that's where you're going to get a lot more layers in terms of how your time entry is going to be, that you might not be able to find with the other solutions. And that's where you're going to get a lot more reporting overall, as you are going to manage the time and entry workflows, the kind of business rules that you're going to fire off, and the kind of inputs that you are going to be expecting, or the outputs that you are going to be expecting, based on that action. All of those scenarios are going to be much easier to manage here. So again, the perspective is very time entry for very complex organizations such as healthcare. If you don't have any other comments, I'll keep moving here. So this is another perspective, I guess, and this is where you have a lot of different solutions. So they are saying, Lawson is used as the global HR, meaning this is going to be your corporate solution. That's where your employees are interacting. So now that's where my problem is. Okay, so let's say if they have one mobile app from your GHR perspective, they are going to have another mobile app from your WFM perspective. So they need to be doing entry at two different places. So that's where that whole confusion is going to be in my mind, because these are two completely different solutions. There is a possibility that Infor might have just one app, and they might be able to shove all of those details inside one app. But for the most part, these are completely different applications. So your experience is going to be very different. If you utilize something like Ceridian, for the most part, I think they are going to have just one app where you are going to get everything that you are going to require. So that's where the real difference is in this solution. But for the most part, your Lawson is probably going to be the enterprise solution. The WFM, since that is done more at the facility level, you are going to be installing that for time management, scheduling, etc. That is going to be at the facility level. And then payroll, in my mind, that would be your corporate as well, because you are trying to pay everybody. I don't know if that is going to be your local solution. there is a possibility depending upon how you are paying your employees. But for the most part, that's probably going to be a corporate solution. Okay, so some reviews here. I don't have any other comments here, so I'll keep going. So this is a very recent review, so 2024. So here, it is utilized by your travel and hospitality, and the person who has utilized this is they are from project management world, which is very interesting. Most likely, they are probably going to be in IT. There is a possibility that they might be in HR. The firm size is 1 billion to 3 billion, USD organization, which is fairly large in general. Now, let's look at some of the comments here. So they have been using this for greater than 10 years with Infor WFM as our solutions. The system has been extremely stable. Now, if you go 10 years back, at that time, I don't think you had a lot of solutions in the market. From the WFM perspective, the large majority of the solutions were not cloud native. They were fairly disjointed. So at that time, it may have made sense. I don't know if it makes sense in 2024 as well. So that is something you might want to keep in mind. The ability to capture staffing requirements that are ever changing is key. So it seems like they are able to manage the staffing requirements. Now they are not clear in terms of which staffing requirements they are talking about, but seems like they are able to manage at least some version of employees, and they are able to manage their scheduling requirements there. Now, the system is very good at keeping us in compliance with current and new labor laws. So it seems like they are happy with that. Now, again, depending upon the organizational maturity, sometimes the organization is going to have a lot of seasoned executives. So for them, the friction may not be as much. But let's say if you have never implemented this, or your executives have never implemented something like this, then you would require a lot more hand holding in configuring these processes. Now, they are saying the export of time flies to Oracle does not fail, ensuring that our employees are paid accurately and on time. And now, if you read between the lines, they are using Oracle as their, if they want to call GHR. I don't know whether you would call GHR or something else, but they are definitely using Oracle. So they must be using, for the most part, Oracle financials, because the payroll is probably going to be part of your, Oracle HCM solution. So they must be a very Oracle shop. But Oracle, I don't know if they have the scheduling component from the ACM perspective, so they might be using the the Infor WFM for their facility scheduling, and that's a very unique piece in general. Now the user is saying, I believe that the mobile app is not where it needs to be. So they are obviously not happy with the mobile app, and that is coming in 2024. So you can see that people are not happy. There are functions, they are not available. And again, I think the features that he's talking about, he's asking for chat functionality, the ability to post messages or videos to select group. Again, those are fancy features you might find with these smaller systems. For example, I'm pretty sure Bamboo is probably going to have that because their data model is fairly light. Implementing these features is fairly easy. So again, if you care for this kind of experience, then you might want to go for slightly lighter solution. But then what you are not going to get is the real data model that you are going to get with this, the business rules, the configurability, and the compliance, etc. That might be challenging with those systems. The competitors, the kind of competitors that they have looked at, they had looked at Legion Technologies that I don't think I have come across before. So this is very interesting. Then they have workforce.com. So these guys must be slightly more specialized WFM systems, and they must be comparing with this. Now, the biggest surprise here is your Blue Yonder. And the reason why Blue Yonder is listed is Blue Yonder is a supply chain solution in general. Okay. So the reason why it is listed is Blue Yonder is going to claim that they can do your supply chain planning, they can do your facility scheduling, but that facility scheduling is very different perspective. That is going to be more from the warehouse perspective. From it's not necessarily production scheduling, but they are going to do retail scheduling. So I don't know where you draw the line. Okay, so for the most part, the Infor WFM solution, I don't think that is comparable with your Blue Yonder, but they are probably going to do similar things. UKG, I'm not too sure if UKG has the real scheduling component. Ceridian definitely does have that. Okay, I'll move to the next one. So this is coming from 2019, and here this is healthcare organization. I know font is a little small, so I will try to read for you. So here we are looking at organization that has roughly 1,000 employees, 1,000 to 5,000. So they are definitely in the right bucket. So the employee is saying that it addresses hospital workforce management for many partners of these clients of, what is that, Citrus Stack or something like that, or Serious Stack, something like that. So that is the name of the company, and they are trying to manage many different clients. So for the most part, this is going to be a consulting organization for healthcare organizations where they might be responsible for scheduling. So they are using this as more of, I don't know whether you want to call this a CRM, but for the consulting organization, there is a possibility that they might be using in that fashion, but they are managing a lot of different client base. So the perspective is very different. The compliance and scheduling of inpatient rehab, SNF, and outpatient care is easy to manage through this application. And again, that is very detailed healthcare functionality that you are not going to find with any other systems. They are talking about the pros and cons. So time management, they are happy. Scheduling, tracking, they are happy, but they are not happy with scheduling next site of care episodes. Okay, so again, when you are going to do this cross facility scheduling, I don't know if this is really good for that, because for the most part the perspective is going to be very facility centric. Then you have security, scalability, but I don't know what that means. They don't have much details there. Yeah, that's pretty much it on this one. I don't have anything else. So the next one is in the government public sector space. So this review is coming from IT. So here they are saying being able to assign staff to multiple distinct locations. So you can do multi-location planning, it seems. So that's great, but seems like this particular user wasn't happy with that. So it seems like they have some capabilities for that. And then they are talking about accurately clock time to specific jobs, programs, and work under multiple teams. So they have some concept of specific jobs and programs, but these jobs are going to be very different. The programs are going to be very different. The perspective is slightly more healthcare, public sector. And they had compared this with UKG, ADP. Again, UKG might not be the right comparison here. ADP does not, as far as we know, we could not see scheduling component as part of ADP. So ADP might be good for payroll, but then you are not going to get the real WFM piece. Okay, if you don't have any other comments, I'll keep going. So some more comments here. So this is coming from Christus, and this is the case study. So this is a not-for-profit health system, and not-for-profit is going to have a lot of different layers as well. Sometimes they sort of overlap between your hospital and not-for-profit. So this is the not-for-profit health system. So that's going to be a marriage of your not-for-profit as well as the healthcare business model. That encompasses more than 350 locations, including long-term care facilities, community hospitals, walk-in clinics, and health ministries. So again, very unique operations in a general. Headquartered in Irving, Texas, the organization also operates in a lot of locations in North America, including Mexico, which is great, but they have some in South America as well. So again, they are able to handle a lot of global operations in this case study. And then they are talking about Christus Health sought to consolidate 19 ledger systems, 16 supply chain management systems, and countless third-party products. So I think they must have utilized other Infor products. That's how they are able to do all of this. So this must be a very large, Infor installation. That's why they are able to do that. But that's not the scope of Infor WFM. Okay, so we have one more case study here. So in this particular case, this is a very unique business as well. This is based in the US. They have 950 retail and fueling locations. So I don't think we have seen a similar business in any of the other reviews. So the industry that they are flagging themselves as is transportation service, but I think they have unique layers in their business model. The number of team members that they have is 28,000. Can you believe this? So this is a very large organization, and they have utilized Infor workforce management. Now they are talking about, so they are doing a lot of fuel because they are a transportation, but they are also a fueling company, and they have more than 950 retail and fueling locations. So in my mind, this seems to be a very convenience store business model with gas stations. That's how I'm perceiving this business model. So it's not necessarily transportation services. It does seem like more of the convenience store business model with the complexity of gas stations that offer a variety of products and amenities to make road travel easier. And that is the intent of convenience stores as well. So they are saying the pilot flying J travel center network includes locations in 44 states and 6 Canadian provinces. So again, very North American footprint. So it's not a global installation as such, with more than 680 restaurants. So restaurants are going to be part of your convenience stores, 74,000 truck parking spaces, and 35 truck care service centers. So this is a very service centric business, and they have to manage the scheduling of parking locations as well. So I don't know if they are utilizing WFM for that, but that could be a very interesting scenario. So I don't know if Infor WFM has been utilized for the real parking companies, because now the even parking companies are trying to utilize a real WFM solution, because each of these slot is sort of monitored, published somewhere for people to be able to see, whether a specific parking lot is open or not. So again, very interesting use case. They are talking about across 950 retail and fueling locations, mean excelling at managing a large, diverse, and distributed workforce. So the intent of this is really managing the workforce. So they are not necessarily managing the schedule of those parking spaces. They are simply utilizing this to manage the workforce. Like a lot of companies, Pilot relied on a disparate mix of systems to help them to do this. So share information, work together seamlessly. Again, this is a very HR centric installation where they are managing workforce, and some of these are going to be very tip centric employees, contingent workers. All of those are probably going to be in the mix with this kind of business model. I don't have anything else that I would like to touch on this slide. Nope, I think I'm good. I don't see any comments. What is the time right now? 2:57. So I'll do one more slide, and just we don't have any more slides, so I think we can open up for the comments.
Yeah, I just had one more question. So as we saw that, with respect to compliance, it has fairly limited capabilities, but on the other side, it's stating that they have target audience as the law force. So do you think that's comparatively like clashing?
So great question. So there are two things. Number one, whenever we talk about compliance, then which compliance are we talking about? In complying with whom? So just because law enforcement agencies, they are responsible for compliance, that does not mean that they don't need to comply with rules as well. So this is going to be for their own organization. So for the most part, the responsibility of WFM, if let's say law enforcement company is using that, then what it is going to do is it is going to help them more from the labor payment compliance perspective, meaning you need to pay them timely, you need to pay them fairly, etc. Right? Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. That clears the confusion.
Okay. Yeah. More questions, more comments, any observations, Sresta?
Other than that, I observed that it's a very healthcare centric. It has healthcare centric capabilities, and especially the scheduling component. So I feel like companies in those sectors, keeping in mind their business requirements, can utilize this solution.
Yeah, could not agree more. I think great assessment. So if you don't have anything else, that's it for today. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our industry series, for which we meet every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with another vendor or the solution. On that note, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.